Good morning and welcome. I'm very pleased to introduce Ethan Rivera to this morning's colloquia. Our history of us spent a lot of time up at the Ohio State John Glenn School of Public Policy, and I was talking to some people up there about engineering policy, and Ethan's name came up, and we spent about an hour talking about engineering policy. And out of that, I realized we need to have Ethan down here specifically to talk to our senior design students, which Ethan did. He came to our senior design class yesterday. We had a great discussion. Students really enjoyed it, and it was really great. So you might well have expected by the bright red suit that you're in for something a little bit different today, and we are. So hopefully you do really enjoy it. I'll give you a little bit of a background about Ethan. And Ethan is the student programming lead for the Ohio State Battelle Center for Science, Engineering, and Public Policy for the John Glenn College of Public Affairs. And so the John Glenn College was started by John Glenn, the Marine astronaut and senator. Ethan also co-instructs the center's interdisciplinary capstone course, Rapid Innovation for Public Impact. That has worked for numerous organizations and government agencies, including the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, NASA, Ohio Department of Transportation, Missile Defense Agency, Honda, and more. And some less formal fun facts about Ethan. He worked for 8 years in psychology, first in forensic psychology for the misdemeanor court and felony probation department, then worked in autism unit at Nationwide Children's Hospital, specializing in psych testing and behavior management. He also writes blogs for a local senior community, living community, an effort to dispel myths about aging, plays a lot of volleyball, and he used to compete nationally in spoken word poetry competitions and traveled the country doing features. He also coached teams of poets for competitions at the high school, collegiate, and adult level. So with that, Ethan Rivera.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. So as Professor Edmondson said, this is going to be a little bit different. My understanding is a lot of your colloquium talkers or speakers are talking a lot about highly technical aspects of the things you're going to be doing in your work. And I'm actually here to talk a little bit about what are the skills you need outside of that space. Especially for those of you who might not plan to be in academic research after you complete your PhD, and for our faculty members who are thinking about how do I better prepare students to go out and into industry. I'd love to get a sense of the people in the room right now. I know my folks are on Zoom, and hello. It's nice to see you as well. But for those of you who are in the room, how many of you plan on want to go into industry at some point in your careers? Yeah, look at all these folks. Love it. Yes, right? This talk is for you, all right? I really want to talk to you all about what sorts of skill sets and what sorts of things we can do to better prepare ourselves in those spaces, and also tell you a little bit about how we have been doing that at the Battelle Center for Science, Engineering, and Public Policy. Again, my background is not science. I have a bachelor's in psychology. I worked in the field for 8 years, and then I've also worked a lot in public speaking and helping people find their voice, learning those essential skills. I was thankfully very much born with being ready to be up here and in front of people. I got it from my father, and I want to be able to give some of those skill sets out to you all today and be a part of that. So without any further ado, I'll just kind of jump into how we're going to talk about this today. So when I'm thinking about education, I think an important question we need to be asking ourselves is, what are we preparing students to be? Right? What are students looking for when they're coming to us to get a degree, whether that be an undergraduate degree, master's degree, or PhD? What are we actually preparing them to be? Right? And a lot of you raised your hands wanting to work in industry. You want to get out there into the world and you want to work in that space. And so many of you, I imagine, have come into this atmosphere to be more prepared to go out into the world and enter the workforce. Right? That's what you're doing. You're trying to make sure that I am qualified to work out in the workforce. And the faculty here are trying to give you the skills that you need to be able to prepare yourselves to be in the workforce. They want you to go out and they want you to be successful because of the skills you learned here, right? But as we think about the ways we're teaching and the skills that we're giving you before you leave, I really think this question is super important in how we're imagining what we're providing to you. Are we giving you the skills you need to be successful in industry? Right? Well, I want to take a look at what employers are saying. What is industry actually saying when we're thinking about these skill sets, right? And employers, for STEM employers, identified these soft skills as extremely necessary to work in their spaces, right? Leadership, human connection, communication, top 3 on the list, right? And I think all of you have heard that, engineers aren't really known for their communication skills and their human connection, right? And I don't believe for a second that all of you came to us with a innate inability to not talk to other people or not be able to communicate or not be able to connect, right? But just like any other skill, it's one that's practiced. How many of you would identify yourself as an introvert in your space? Yeah, you don't have to lie. It's okay. All my introverts are like me, kind of. Yeah, see, I get that, right? I see that and I understand it. I am an extrovert, if you couldn't tell by the everything about me, right? And the world, in a lot of ways, is built for extroverts. And that's not to say that it should be in any way. But there are skill sets that you want to be able to learn and you want to be able to practice. And again, just like anything else, you're seeing employers want you to have these skills. But are we providing them when we educate you here? Are we giving you the opportunity to learn these things as you go through? Right? Another thing for employers, they're talking about how prepared they feel that recent college graduates at any level are to utilize these soft skills and relative to their importance and how much they think it matters in their space. And so all of these skill sets, effectively working in teams, effective oral communication, applying knowledge to the real world. Employers are seeing these gaps. They want, and what ends up happening as a result, right? You have to learn these on the fly while they're paying you, hopefully. Because too many of our graduates are walking out the door without being able to use these skills in these STEM fields. Right? But employers aren't the only ones who notice. The internet notices. They've memed us, y'all. They've told us what they feel and what they think. It is not required for you to have lower social skills to be in this space and be an engineer. It is not a requirement of the space at all. In fact, I want to be up here in my red suit with all of this energy to give you all permission to be yourselves in every space. Don't let the word professional mean you have to hide back. I'm very buttoned up, all right? I clean up nice. But at the same time, I want to have a good time with people. And if you're passionate about these spaces, let that passion show. Don't be afraid to hide it in there. Or don't hide it in there. Don't be afraid. Oh, that's the wrong computer. There we go. And then I also think about what people are saying. How many of you have heard at least one of these things said when you were talking about your interest, your research, your passion in this space? How many of you have had something similar said to you as you were trying to talk to somebody who didn't have your background? Yeah, I've said it before too, right? Me and my soft science degree, as it would be called. I think it's important to think about this, and rather than look at it as a badge of honor in a lot of these things, I think it's important what they're actually trying to say to us. One of the myths I like to dispel when I think about these quotes, when I think about "you're way too smart for me," that one especially, right, is you're not, right? It's not to say you're not smart. and you're not incredibly intelligent, and you're not out here doing something absolutely amazing. But it's not an intelligence gap that people are actually trying to tell us is happening when we're talking to them about engineering. Right? I could come into this room and talk to you about all the work I did at Nationwide Children's Hospital and use all the language that I learned while working in psychology, and you all might not understand a single word of what I said because I'm using a language that's different than the one you use every day. It's a language you don't know. So rather than this idea of you're too smart for me, or this idea of, oh no, I have to quote unquote dumb it down for you to understand, I want to dispel that idea. You don't have to do that. What you have to do is you have to find a common language of understanding, right? I'm not going to be able to tell you that I gave a Wyatt to a student and you understand what that means. But if I tell you I was testing for academic proficiency or academic success for students, that's something that you might be able to grab onto and be like, okay, so math and reading, comprehension, things like that, right? But if I just go into the language that I've been, it's a crutch. We think of it as this, I'm showing you that I know what I'm talking about. We're used to talking to other scientists and other engineers and showing how precise we can be in our language. Right? When I started at the Patel Center, I wasn't student programming lead. I was actually a marketing associate. I was hired for my writing skills and my ability to tell people about what was happening at the center. Right? And we had a research scientist who was incredible at what he did. And he would give me some of his research and I would have to read through it. And my best ability, I would translate what he was doing for an article that would go up on our website. I would send it to him for review and it would get changed completely. And one of the things I had to keep telling him was, hey, like the language of this is not going to be able to be understood by everybody. And our website is not an academic journal. It's not a scientific journal. It's a public-facing space where we want students' parents to see it and think, oh, that's pretty cool. Look at what they're doing at the Patel Center. So we can't talk to them in a language that's made for scientists. But it was hard for him to break this need to be as specific and precise as possible. So when we're thinking about how we're talking to folks, how we're entering these spaces, it's a skill that needs to be practiced to be able to use a language that you have not been taught every day to use in your programs, right? And for faculty is the same, right? Giving our students the opportunity to explain, hey, explain this to me so that if I knew nothing about your project, I could understand. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have to be able to do that if you're working in industry, right? So in thinking about these gaps and thinking about these things that everyone is saying when they're trying to talk with us about science, right? We've watched science engineers, medical professionals, we've watched people doubt everything they're saying, right? And I wouldn't say it's because they're not trustworthy. It's because of two things. One, I think when you watch the scientific process in real time, people feel like they're being lied to rather than learning is happening. And two, connected to that, we're not very good at communicating science to people who don't have science degrees and backgrounds. We're not good at showing the process. We don't want to have to apologize for hypothesis testing and then getting a different answer. That's not how we want to be able to do this. But at the same time, we have to find better ways of communicating why things are updating. I remember when the pandemic first hit and people were like, we don't want people to wear masks. That makes people feel like they can just go out and do whatever they want, and it's not what masks are for. And then all of a sudden it was, okay, you need to do masks. And people were like, you just lied to me. You told me I didn't need this, and now all of a sudden you're saying I have to do this. Right? And there was no try to fix of that. There was no space of like, hey, what we've learned is. And even if we did, is that going to be effective in these spaces? So it doesn't matter what the science tells us at the end of the day. What we learned over the course of 2 years of lockdowns and the continued process of all of this, what we've learned is that the science isn't enough. Most of you are not just wanting to do knowledge for knowledge's sake, especially if you're going into industry. You want to make an impact on the world around you, right? So if that's the case, if that's what we want to do, we want to go into industry. People are coming to college to be more ready to enter into the workforce, to get jobs, to be prepared. They want to walk out of here more prepared. And we're seeing employers and the internet and everyday folks saying, hey, these are skills you all don't have. Then we go back to the original question. What are we preparing students to be if our industry partners are saying they don't have the skills to be ready to do things on day one? They're not prepared. Are we preparing students to be graduate students? Are we preparing them to be PhD students? And that doesn't make much sense, right? Because like if 17% of the population of college students are in graduate programs, 2% are in PhD programs, all of a sudden our training is training a vast minority of our undergraduate students to do something they don't plan on doing. Or we're training you all, vast majority of you all raised your hands about wanting to enter industry at some point. We're not training you all with the skills you need to be able to do this. But there is hope, I promise. We can make it happen. So the biggest reason why these skills are more and more necessary in our daily lives, right, is we are in a world of wicked problems, right? We are in a world where everything is messy and we can't solve them on our own, right? As we said before, COVID-19 pandemic, it comes through and the science isn't enough to make people believe what they're seeing, right? So it's not enough to be a group of scientists telling a group of everyone else what the science says. We need people from different backgrounds to be able to solve these challenges, right? And wicked problems, they're defined by being highly complex, right? Our world is so much more interconnected than it's ever been, and every day it gets more connected, right? We need more disciplines, which means you all aren't going to get to work with just engineers, right? We've been talking about this campus, right? We have this campus, it's beautiful. I am in awe walking around this space on campus. But I also think about the fact that it's just engineers here all the time. Where are the other people? How are you going to learn how to talk with them? How are you going to find interdisciplinary opportunities to do something? Because I guarantee you, people who work at NASA, right? An engineer didn't draw the NASA logo. An engineer doesn't write the press release. An engineer doesn't run the NASA Twitter account. And these are all important facets of what happens at NASA. And they're not just doing it on their own. It's not just a marketing person being like, space, here we go. They have to talk with folks who have the expertise and then find that translation to be able to put it out into the world. What I'm curious from some of my students here today, like what are some of the industries or areas that you all want to enter? And whether it's in the industry or maybe it's in your research, what are some things that you all are very interested in solving or being a part of learning? What are those areas that you all are learning about? Don't be shy, because I will pick out random folks, because I'm not shy. No? What about you? Your smile is kind of infectious every time I say things, so I'm going to you to make myself feel better about what I'm saying. What's an area that you're interested in studying?
So I'd like to continue to do some sort of research in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
My current path.
Yeah.
But let's not think about it.
You just started? Okay, that's great. Are there industries that interest you more than others? Like maybe are you interested in automotive work? Are you interested in energy? Are you interested in space? Like, is there an industry you kind of want to enter into or want to learn more about? Wireless communications. I love that. No, that's great. Great. Wireless communications, designing chips that make those things happen, right? What are some other industries that people are hoping to enter or ignite their passions in this space? Anybody else want to share? You all are so shy. Don't do this to me. I'm in a red suit. Let's live a little. What are we thinking? Can I pick on you in the green jacket? Hi. In medicine, absolutely. Think about how we've talked about COVID-19, right? And how wicked that challenge is, right? We're thinking about wireless communications. We think about medicine. We have student communities we'll talk about a little later that are in high-tech fields that require so many of us to get together, right? But in wireless communications, you have to think about more than just the technology. Medicine, you can't just make the most amazing technology and then all of a sudden it gets adopted. There are so many different areas that you have to think about when trying to enter into these spaces, right? So when we're thinking about solving for wicked problems, we can't rely on invention. We can't rely on just creating technology. We have to understand innovation in this process, right? And at the senior design team group that I was talking with yesterday, I asked them, what do you think is the difference between invention and innovation, right? Or research and innovation? What are the differences in these spaces? And really what it comes down to is we have three areas of what innovation means. They meet in the middle, and we have innovation, and that's desirability, feasibility, viability. Feasibility is all about the technology. Do we have the technology to be able to do this, right? Do we have the infrastructure to make this possible, right? Viability is about the money. Is this sustainable economically? Can we run our business with this? If we buy this, are we going to have to replace it every 6 months? What are the things that are needed to make sure that we can continue to pay for this or that we can make money on doing this? Right? But the part that's the most important when you're in an innovation space, if you are going to make something that actually matters and makes an impact, it's desirability. What do people actually want? What do people actually need? Right? My favorite example of this is the Segway. Everyone knows what a Segway is. Right? That business failed miserably. We had the technology, right? They had the money to make the investment. They knew how much to charge to do it. And people looked at that thing and went, cool, I can walk. I'm good, right? Because the crucial part this guy missed, he made something cool. The precursor to the hoverboard, right? The precursor to really the Lime scooters that you see everywhere around that are being used all the time. Because those spaces, after a while, found their market. They found what people wanted and why they would want them and designed their things to make it so that it's what you wanted. People didn't care about having this larger contraption in their home and using it to get around everywhere, but they liked the idea of being able to get to certain places a little easier without having to use their car. Or they like having kids go around and maybe trip and fall on hoverboards. How many of you have used a hoverboard? A couple of you, yeah. I'm terrified. Is it easier than it looks? Okay. I'll try one day, not today. Not in this suit. It's not gonna happen. But yeah, it's this piece of desirability. And this is the reason, right? This is the reason why we need skills that are beyond just our technical skills. We need something that helps you get at this point, because this is where you have to talk to people. This is where you have to be able to connect and better understand what the real problem is that people are having. It's amazing to watch how simple innovations can be. Another cool example of this, I personally think, I ran into the free moms on campus yesterday. What a cool concept. What a simple concept, right? They look at the problem. I mean, having been in academia for a while and been in industry spaces and had to have a conversation about mental health. I mean, I worked at Children's Hospital. We were talking about it all the time. about the mental health of kids, of students. And we talk a lot about it. And we try to solve these things with big initiatives and things that are going to make it easier and change how you all connect with things and connect with each other. And we try to make these big things. But one person was like, what if we just gave them a place to like hang out with a dog for a little while? That's an easy dopamine hit. We have research that says that. What if we had a place where people were just like saying hello and asking how your day was going? Like you were a person they saw and mattered. And how simple that solution is. That's innovation, right? They didn't invent anything new. They didn't do a bunch of scientific research in a space. They said, hey, you know what? I know from talking to people, they like dogs. They like getting dogs. They like being able to pet one. They like somebody wagging their tail when they see them, you know? I'm sad that when I get home, I'm getting home too late to be able to pick up my dog from daycare, so I have to wait till Saturday morning, and no one's gonna wag their tail when I come home, right? That's an international crime. I hate that. I want someone to be happy I'm home, right? It's such a simple thing when we try to actually just talk to what do you need, rather than just trying to solve a technical problem, right? I'm constantly gonna touch the wrong computer. So what skills do our students need when they leave, right? Again, we're going back to what the employer said. We need social skills. We need to be able to talk to people and connect with them and understand what's going on, right? We need leadership skills. And leadership doesn't mean being able to tell people what to do, but it's about that human connection, right? We need communication skills. Social skills are about connectivity. Communication is about being able to reliably tell other people what it is you're trying to do, right? And we need a growth mindset. Spend a lot of time in your spaces. And I think for PhD students, it's a lot different, right? Research is a lot different. But in undergrad, right, when we're thinking about grading, spend a lot of time punishing people for not knowing. And that's what, like, you can tell by the way students fear their grades, fear what their GPA is, that there's this fear of not knowing enough, rather than this understanding of not knowing and being wrong is an opportunity for learning what happens. I'll talk a little bit more about what we do with that in a little bit as well. But at the end of the day, we have to create these opportunities. We have to create these skills. And if we don't do that, what we're creating are just engineers, cogs in a machine. And that's not what employers are looking for anymore. They need people who have a larger breadth of skills, right? I looked at my resume when I was 28 years old, and I was afraid of it. I was afraid that I had created a resume that was going nowhere, right? I had worked in psychology for a while, but I had no interest in being a doctor. I had worked in a convenience store before that, and I had small jobs working. I worked as an umpire for a little while. I just started hosting a trivia show. I'd done all these things. I'd done a lot of things, but I was like, where is it going? Like, what am I going to be able to do and just be like, hey, I'm in a career? And what I learned when I started going into interviews was people actually really valued the breadth of the things that I had done. They saw a lot of different skills being used in different spaces. They saw someone who was malleable and able to go out and just say, yeah, I'll do that. And my boss who hired me for marketing was like, I wanted to hire a generalist. I didn't want somebody who just knew marketing and that's where they were going to stay for the rest of their time here. I wanted someone who had the skill set to do new things and to keep pushing and to become more, right? And that's on us as people to want to grow, to keep that growth mindset, to do more in our spaces, to grow these other skills. But also, it's on the spaces that we're in that are telling us, hey, you need this to be qualified to work in these industries, to be successful, right? So we go now, we think of these skills as soft skills. Hate that term. Because I feel like when we talk about psychology as a soft science, we have a very technical meaning of like, well, it's not exact. But we're also kind of saying like, You're not a real science. You're a soft science, right? So we have hard skills, and that's being able to work on with particular technologies or being able to write in codes and all of the coding languages and programming languages. And those are our hard skills. But I think when we start looking at this, when we look at what industry is saying they need from us, what they need from our engineers, they're not soft skills anymore. They're essential skills. They are important that you have them when you're entering the workforce. One of the students at the talk yesterday, I asked, what's your biggest fear when you graduate? And he said, I don't want to be in a dead-end job. Facts. No, I don't. Once I'm at the top of where I can reach, it's time for me to move on, right? But if you are just an engineer, if that's all you want to be, you're going to have dead-end skills going into these industry places, right? You'll get promoted, and then there's no like more engineer. You're even more of an engineer, and today you're more of an engineer. That's not what's going to happen, right? You're going to get promoted, and then eventually maybe you're going to be lead of a project team, and you're going to be an engineer with the skill set of an engineer with no skill set on how to lead a project team. And then we get into that space of everyone gets promoted until they are actually incompetent at their job, and then they just stay there, right? And then it means you're learning on the fly. And some of us might be able to do that. Some of us might be able to grow. But some of us also, it's going to be 10, 15 years before we get there. And then you're 35 like me, and you're like, well, I don't really want to learn new skills. It's not true. I do want to learn new skills every day. But also, I like sleeping. You know what I mean? So it's better to get a foundation of these skills now, learn how to practice them now, than it is to get out into the industry and have to learn them on the fly. With the way we're teaching, with the way if you all just come to school, you can earn your degree and have minimal contact with ever talking to other people in other disciplines. And you will have a degree that says you're ready to enter the workforce. And I would argue, maybe you're not. You'll get the workforce, you'll get into the workforce, you'll get hired for your technical skills, but you won't advance, and you're more likely to get fired for your essential skills gaps than you are for your technical ones. And I don't want that for you all, right? So if these are the things we need, if we know industry wants these things, and we know today's wicked problems require more than just science to solve them, and we're still in here giving you, all of your classes are about technical acumen. All of the spaces that you're entering into are about technical acumen. Then what are we actually preparing you to do? What are we preparing students to be? And how can we reimagine being able to work with our industry partners to create more opportunities for our students to graduate and be ready, right? I think sometimes when I say this, I think it sounds threatening to what academia is. And it sounds provocative. And I don't want it to be that. I don't want this to be a space where it feels like I'm saying, like, we are failing. We're not failing. We're doing something we've been doing for hundreds of years. But we also have an opportunity to grow, and we have the skills to be able to bring this to our spaces. This is the greatest environment to learn these skills. You are around tens of thousands of people every day who are your peers in other industries, in other spaces. You are never going to get a chance like this, probably the rest of your life. And we are never going to get a better chance to teach these students and give them that leg up, that difference, where people are like, oh my gosh, that program, that engineering program doesn't just churn out engineers, they churn out people who are incredible employees for this company. And we want that too. We want that for our own prestige, but we want to be able to know the satisfaction that people are seeing a difference between the people who leave other university spaces and leave ours. So we've created our own wicked problem. We've created our own space of, we need to solve for this skills gap for our students to graduate and be ready. And how are we going to do it? And we can't do it with more science. It's not an app. We're not going to be able to create an app and be like, hey, essential skills, right? We need to be able to do something different. So we need to be able to ask questions. How do we solve our own wicked problem? The Battelle Center for Science, Engineering, and Public Policy, we live in the Public Affairs College, right? Our Public Affairs College literally has management and leadership degrees. We're teaching essential skills. That's what we're doing. We have them at the undergraduate level. We have minors in this. We have opportunities for that. And I also help with our center to steward our science and engineering in the public interest minor, where we are creating coursework geared towards attracting engineers who want to complete their and fully round their skill sets, right? One student, well, we'll talk about that in a second, but we do this through 3 different ways. And I think these are opportunities that we have at every university, and especially at a university like NC State, serving so many students. I was walking around in your labs. It was honestly breathtaking to see the work that you all are doing and the work that students are doing here. Even at the undergraduate level, I was floored, right? These senior capstone courses, you know, they are so important. And I think sometimes we're bringing them into these spaces, and it's going to be the first time they have to do more than just engineering. And so we have done this through 3 different ways at the Battelle Center. And this isn't necessarily what has to happen everywhere. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that I don't want to give you a wicked problem and tell you, cool, I'm going back to Columbus, have fun, right? I want to be able to come up here and say, hey, we have ideas. We're doing things that are a little different. And I want to share with you what we're trying to do. And maybe you all can find something that works for you all to be able to handle this. So this is how we are providing new skills to STEM students at The Ohio State University. Although it did not move on. There we go. Huh? It was just a delay. Okay. This is how we're providing skills to STEM students at our center, right? We're doing it through coursework. We're doing it through research, and we're doing it through our co-curricular opportunities. When we're thinking about our coursework, the most experiential coursework probably you're ever going to have is a capstone project, right? When you're thinking about working with industry partners. And then as you go through in your master's and stuff, you're going to have more opportunities to talk with industry partners on research and all of that, right? But we don't want that to just happen late in their school, right? We don't want that to just happen when they are 23, 24, or at the end, if you're a non-traditional student, if you're at the end of your degree getting space, right? We want to be able to help you prepare, because those classes, we were talking about, Dr. Edmondson or Professor Edmondson and I were talking about how there are so many skills that people don't have, and it's like, this class is an easy A. It's a senior capstone course. It's an easy A. And I would agree. I think it is easy. It should be easy, right? It's not, because it's not the grade that matters. It's the experience. So it's really, we're grading you on your ability to commit to doing things, right? But if you don't have the skill set to do it, it's going to feel a lot harder. It feels so hard. And all we want you to do is try. And sometimes it's like, well, hey, I've been taught if I fail at something, I get a 63 instead of an 85. Or I get a 13 instead of a 35 and then get rounded up and I'm still at the bottom of the class. But that's not how the world works, right? So we are trying to create coursework that is more experiential and interdisciplinary all the way through, right? We have public affairs courses and we have public affairs students in them, but we're attracting STEM students into those same exact courses. So they have to talk with each other. We put them on interdisciplinary teams throughout the coursework that they might take with our center. So for example, our lowest level course is, well, I guess for us, it's 2000 level, maybe 200 level. I think you all do the hundreds, which is, I don't know why we decided thousands was the number we needed, but it's fine. 2000 level course where we have freshmen through seniors all the way through the course. We have people who are interested in the intersections of STEM and policy, which is everything, right? It touches on everything. But we're not just quizzing and testing all the time. We are actually creating opportunities for them to apply skills early on, not just their technical skills, but to have to learn some communication skills and make a pitch at the end of the class. And we're not here to be like, your pitch was terrible, I'm out. We're here to build on it throughout the process. Give us where your pitch is at now. Talk to us about it. Here's the gaps in what you don't know. Go out and find out about it, right? We have team projects with team training. We don't come into our capstone courses and put them on teams and then say, go. We do that. But we also make sure we include team dynamics trainings, things that are about what is the difference between project management and leadership. How a project manager doesn't mean more work, it's another percentage of the work, right? You can't be out here saying like, oh, we're each doing 25% of the work, but then there's an extra 10% of the work, that's project management, that this other person has to do. So there's 110% now of work that needs to be done, and they're doing 35% of it. No, it's a part of what you're doing, right? I tell students, look around at your teammates, and whoever has a binder that has dividers in it, that's your project manager, right? If you're the person with loose sheets of paper in your backpack at all times, maybe not. If you're the person whose entire front screen, home screen on your computer is covered in random icons, maybe not the project manager, right? If it's neat and nice in folders, maybe you're a project manager. But it's not about more prestige. That's not what it is, right? We've conflated the two because of how we hire and how we promote and hierarchies, right? But you can be a great project manager and not a great leader. And you can be a great leader and not a great project manager. And so we're trying to tell students, these are the things you need to know. These are the things you need to think about when working on your team. How many of you all have worked on a team where you felt you had to do most of the work, if not all of the work? Go ahead, put your hand up there. Yeah, look at them. Y'all are warming up to me. I appreciate that, right? It's so real, right? Because you're sitting in a space, you're like, I need this A. And this person's gonna, if I let this person do it, I'm not getting my A, right? But a lot of these projects, it's not really the case. It's not the same. But also, being the person who's doing the least in a project and being the person who takes over a project, they're both just as detrimental to the project. Your project's not going to be as good if you're doing the work alone when you're on a team, because you're not getting new inputs. You're stressing yourself out, right? That's not balance. That's you working into the middle of the night and not getting enough sleep. And you're not going to do the best work if you're not sleeping, if you're not taking care of yourselves, if you're just stressing out about all the work you have to do. And believe me, we take time in making sure that our team projects aren't, they're team projects because one person can't do them, shouldn't do them. So we want to make sure that students understand this as they go through. We don't want to leave them out and just say, figure out what teamwork is. We want to give them training and a little bit of foundation, because sometimes these things are obvious, but sometimes if they're not top of mind, you just don't do them. Right? And then again, we talk about rewarding failure. Innovation is about failing. It's about an opportunity to come up and say, hey, you know, you went out and you told people, this is the problem we are hearing, and it's the only problem that's happening in this sector. And then people said, no, actually, this is also a problem, and this is also a problem. And students feel very dejected when they hear they're wrong. And I am up at the front cheering them on, because look at how much closer you are to the right answer now. Right? Students are going through their solution sets in these capstone projects, and 6-7 weeks in, they have to make a hard pivot because they've had some interviews that have shown them that their original solution idea isn't going to fix anything or isn't what people want. And they're like, we just wasted 6 weeks. And I was like, no, you spent 6 weeks finding out that this is the direction you need. And it wouldn't have happened in 1 week if you decided that thing. You have to learn. You have to fail. You have to be able to be wrong, and nothing you're going to create is going to survive its first attempt out in the real world. Whether you're prototyping or anything, you're going to show a prototype and they're going to tell you what isn't functional or what isn't wanted or what is needed. And that failure of being wrong when you make it is a great opportunity to be like, and now I'm closer to the answer. So we're trying to give students more of an opportunity to understand that failing isn't a terrible thing that's going to happen to them. It's a learning opportunity, right? And we're not trying to say like, hey, if you were wrong a lot early on and you learned, I want your grade to reflect where you are at the end of a class, not where you were in week 3 when you were still trying to get a grip on what was happening around you. Right? That's disingenuous for these types of projects. It's disingenuous to be like, well, you were not doing very well at the beginning, but I want you to know right now, this is great work. And you've gotten here and you've learned and you figured it out and you clawed and scratched your way to get here. This is great. Right? Our rapid innovation class is a great example of this. It's similar to the capstone course, right? And we've worked on a lot of interdisciplinary work. So in the capstone course, we've talked a lot about a lot of the projects are very technical. A lot of our projects are more about adoption of work, right? These are just a few of the teams we've had working, and I'll make sure you all get access to this. So each of them is clickable. You'll get like a 2-minute video of one of these things, and you can see like where their challenges were. But we had engineering students on all of these challenges, right? What if we could accelerate the United States' independence from fossil fuels by securing effective state government acceptance instead of hostility to sustainable energy initiatives? I don't know if y'all have heard about Ohio, but they don't like energy there. They don't like solar farms. They don't like wind farms. We've unilaterally given every county the opportunity to say, you're not allowed to build here, whether a person wants to use their farmland for it or not. You're in our county. We don't want it. They're an ugly eyesore and they poison the world. Misinformation is key in that space, right? And so we had a policy major, we had an engineering major, and we had a social sciences major working on this challenge, right? We had a PhD, a master's, and an undergraduate student. All together, one class working on this challenge for 16 weeks, right? And this is the original problem statement they had. All right, how are we going to convince governments to do this? And as they went out and as they interviewed stakeholders, they interviewed subject matter experts, they interviewed people that mattered to figure out what was needed. And they learned, hey, this company we're working for, they need to be more present at the beginning of these project development stages. They need to be there in these communities, making these connections, and not just trying to get things through as quickly as possible so that they can be built. We want to build a plan for this company to utilize their resources to make better connections and not have to shoulder the load of all of this. Changes minds, right? Right now, we have a challenge in cybersecurity at Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab. We have a business major, we have a CSE student, we have a policy major, and I'm blanking on the 4th one. They're all undergrads. But it's not, let's build a cybersecurity opportunity and write a bunch of code to make sure no one can break into our secrets. It's all about adoption. How do we make cultural cybersecurity changes at a place as large and as important as the Applied Physics Lab? And a CSE student is getting an opportunity not to just translate what these different cybersecurity opportunities are, but to see, okay, what do these actually look like in practice? Because we can probably make the most secure network in the world and make it impossible to get into, but is it actually going to be useful to the people who have to get into it? You all have Duo, right? How many of you hate having to click accept on your Duo or find your phone every time you're locking into something, right? Right? We are the weakest part of any system, and even though it's so important, and it's so simple, right? I love my Apple Watch now that they let me push accept on my Apple Watch. That's a cool innovation, right? Because before it would just be like, you have a Duo thing. I'm like, I know, but where is my phone? Right? Now I can just do it for my watch. Wonderful, easy. That makes my life easier. I hate Duo a little less. But how do we actually make sure that these things get used and used correctly and that they're wanted to be used, right? Each of these projects, Whisker Cure is probably the most technical one. Family First, we had an integrated systems engineering major working on this one. E-Cubed, we had a nuclear engineer working on that challenge. Space Saviors, we had policy majors. We had aerospace engineers working on it. But they're not necessarily doing highly technical things. They're figuring out, okay, in practice, how can we make these satellites do the things we want them to do? What can they be used for? Right? These are important parts of what you might be able to learn in your spaces. Rather than just, I need to use my technical acumen, it's, I need to be able to communicate my technical acumen and then be able to use that to make sure applications work, right? I love this class. If I was 21 years old, I was not motivated enough to take it. But I think I would have learned a lot if I did. And now as being a co-instructor for this course, it matters so much. And I love watching the students say, this is the first time I've been able to apply my skills. This is one of the quotes. I really like this quote from one of our students. I think it matters to me that we're not just teaching them a bunch of things. We don't do a lot of lecture. It's a lot of workshops. It's a lot of do this, give it a shot, learn about the people, make your plan for who you want to interview. But it's really about giving them the skills that they haven't had a chance to find out they have, or that find out that they don't have, and be able to really showcase, hey, we have 16 weeks of legitimately stimulating problem-solving, critical thinking, life lessons, while you're getting to utilize the skills you've learned in all of your classes up to that point. So we also do this in co-curricular. We have student communities of practice and engagement. We call it SCOPE. This is about connecting students from different disciplines who are all interested in things, right? I wanted to be an astronaut when I was growing up. And then I learned I don't like takeoff and flying. Still don't. Hated coming here. But also, I'm good at math, but I don't want to do it all the time. I'm not an astronaut. I'm not built for it. But now I work in it. We have an aerospace, an air and space student community where we bring in engineers from NASA, and then we bring in folks who are building their own aerospace companies, and we bring in materials folks, we bring in logistical folks, we bring in policymakers, and I have more hands in space than I ever thought I could without having to be an astronaut or an astronomer. I am utilizing my skills to do those things. So in our student communities, we don't just have aerospace engineers attending our air and space student community events, but we have marketing majors, we have psychology majors, we have speech and hearing majors who are just interested in space, and they've come together because they want to learn more about what's happening in this exciting industry, right? Sustainable energy, we have environmental sciences, we have chemical engineers, we have environmental engineers, but we also have policymakers, and we have social science majors who want to be a part of this because these are wicked places in our space. We want to know more, and we want to figure it out. We have computer science majors who want to be in the space industry, right? And so our guest speakers come from everywhere, right? We don't want to just show them all their technical folks. We want to show them there are a million parts of this industry that you can be a part of, right? We had an energy lawyer come in and tell all of our engineering students, one of the most powerful things you can do to advocate for more sustainable energy is to learn how to communicate your science in a way that allows you to be effective on the stand in a courtroom, right? Because we're going to have a lot of times where we have to sue places for not being allowed, or be able to talk about what a law means and what it does and its impacts. And we need experts to be able to say that. And we need them to be effective on the stand to do it. And at the end of the day, I think building a network is always going to be important. Not just with your fellow students, because that's your first professional network, but also people in industry. We bring in guest speakers who are like, hey, email me if you want to connect, right? And not every student does it, but a few do, and they get their mentorship opportunities. They get 15 minutes to just talk about the industry and learn what skills they need, or maybe even get a quick in to be able to talk about internships and jobs that they might get later on. I've gotten maybe one job, 2 jobs in my life that didn't require me to have known somebody before I got them. One was working at a convenience store. Don't really need an in to work at a convenience store. And one was because I found it on Craigslist during the Super Bowl. And that's shady. And I got lucky. It's shady. But I worked at Nationwide Children's because my best friend said, hey, we're going to be hiring in 4 months and you want out of your job. Let me get you an interview with my boss. And I came in, they're like, cool, in 2 months, we're going to hire you for sure. I'm like, love it, because I need out, right? My work at Ohio State, I worked with, when I worked at Children's, I worked with my former boss's son. He comes up to me and he's like, hey, I know you're starting to do this marketing thing now. My mom is looking for somebody, marketing communications. I'm pretty sure she's looking for you. I learned later that they'd interviewed like 20 different people for the position and just no one felt right. And then he brings my resume to his mom calls, I get an interview, I'm working 3 weeks later. I DJ events and MC. I know, that's really surprising. I love doing it. I love performing for people. And I got that job because a friend of mine was like, you'd be really good at hosting trivia shows. My friend does it, and he's always looking for new hosts, and hired me to run trivia. And then the guy was like, I think you'd be a good DJ. Why don't you come shadow me for a summer? And I did it, and I love it. So even as you're doing this, as you're going through college, you want to network, you want to make sure you're making those connections. And so here are some pictures of some of the things we're doing. We have them talking with folks in the military, especially getting ready to work in Space Force, so that they understand more about what that means, because there's an image in our head of what that means, but it's not always that. We had, oh my gosh, I just lost her name from APL. She was the mission operations manager for the first mission to Pluto that got us our first close range pictures of Pluto. She came in talking about her life and her ability to go through things and talk about it. We have our students paying attention. We also do game nights to help give skill sets. One of my favorites, we had a game called Ransom Notes. Has anybody played Ransom Notes before? Oh my gosh, y'all, live a little, right? Ransom Notes is a game, it's like with refrigerator magnets. It's got random words on it. They're all pretty like normal words for the most part. Some of them are weird words, but most of them are normal words. And you get prompts and you have to use only the words in front of you. You get like 100 words, you pick them out of a thing. You can only use the words in front of you. So you don't make complete sentences all the time. Sometimes they're a little weird. Usually it's funny. And someone is the judge and decides which one they think is the funniest. And then you keep going, right? But then at the end of that game, I said, I want you to describe your major using only the words in front of you. And now you can't lean on that crutch of, I know how to be precise in my language and say this thing. I have to find a different way to describe this so that everyone in the space understands. And then we got their answers, we shuffled them up, we wrote everyone's majors on the board and tried to match them up with the majors. It's just a quick little way of practicing these things, taking them. We had a game called Red Flags, where you're essentially trying to create a date for somebody by having you have green flag cards and you say like, this is it, they're perfect in this and they're amazing at this, and you're pitching them, and then somebody passes you a red flag card and you have to now pitch them with the risk, and now you're learning, how do I sell this? How do I sell that my person with perfect hair and your mom loves them is amazing even though she's dead, right? Like that was the card I got. I did not win that round, right? But I tried real hard to focus on the positives and why the risk wasn't that bad. These are things you're gonna have to do when you're out there in industry, right? So we're trying to make these connections. We want people to have fun. We want people laughing. We want them being able, my favorite moment is if at the beginning of a scope or at the end of one, people are just standing around talking to each other. It's my favorite part. I love that we're creating an opportunity for people to just connect and talk and meet new people all the time. And the last is in our applied research space. I think one of the things we do a lot, especially with undergrads, they do grunt work because that's what their skill sets allow them to do. In a lot of ways, they haven't gotten to a point yet where they can really dive into a lot of this research. And if you just give them the opportunity on that alone, we might have some issues, right? So what we're trying to do in this is we're trying to do some more student-focused activities. We have projects where we ask for a little more money than would normally ask for, and our pitch is we want to be able to train an undergraduate student to be able to be more ready to do these types of research things. And we want to pay them for their work, but we also want to pay ourselves for the extra work of training these students, right? It's giving them more opportunities to work in these spaces, and especially in applied ones. We have our recently launched think tank space where we're trying to help students, we're going to be advisors for students who are working on highly technical projects, but we help them with all the logistical spots. We help them with innovation, and we know like, yeah, they could ask faculty, but faculty are busy. You all have your own research, you have your own spaces, and then you end up advising 7 teams. And I've watched one of our, prominent aerospace engineering faculty, Dr. John Horak, and he has 7 capstone projects or PhD students that he's working with and his own research with Starlink and Starlab and all this. And I never see that man ever. It's because he's so busy all the time. And we want to be able to create a space where, hey, we're here to advise and get you through, and then we can connect you with the faculty or the subject matter experts that are going to help you get the technical knowledge you need while we're helping you with the process knowledge you need, right? Takes a little bit off of our faculty to be able to focus on the things that they need to be doing while giving students the same opportunities and not having to feel shy or worried about asking a faculty member or finding a faculty member who has the time, right? And then we use them also as recruiting opportunities for our industry partners. It's a way for industry partners to meet students. Students can grow their network. They can show off their skills. And it's a really great way for when we're thinking about our industry partners connecting with students in that way, right? So all of this is to say, we've tried to build a program that's a little bit different because we want our engineering students, our STEM students to walk away with the essential skills they're going to need when they enter industry, when they leave this space. We don't do a great job of telling students that this isn't the real world in college until we say it in points where it's the least heard or least effective for them to know, right? And we do a great job at teaching. That's something that we have the opportunity to do. And there are ways that we can teach these skills without ever having to have just one class that's how to talk to people. You don't need a 3,000 level course or a 300 level course that's engineering how to talk to people, right? But we can build opportunities into what we've already have to make these things happen. Because right now, the industries that we are serving by sending our students out with their degrees, saying they're ready, are finding these gaps, and we're putting it on students. We're putting it on our industry partners to teach them these things when they leave. And that costs money and time, and we can actually build those here, right? And I think students, I think this is also on you all, right? When I was, it's on us to find those opportunities too sometimes. It's not going to be always readily apparent. Join student organizations that have nothing to do with what you're doing every day, right? Find things where maybe it's just an interest, right? Like I love volleyball. I played volleyball all through college. It had nothing to do with psychology, but I met a lot of cool people. I met a lot about teamwork. I learned a lot about traveling and having to be in the same space with people that I didn't like all the time. That's something that's a good skill to have too. Right? But it's these skills that you can practice in your everyday world. You just sometimes have to go out and find it. Don't let all of the other classwork drain out the opportunities to do those things. So a lot of our applied research spaces, we had students, a group of aerospace engineering students who were passionate also about sustainability, who got together and entered the NASA Blue Skies competition, and we got to go to NASA Langley as part of that. It was really funny to me because everyone had on the list of the 8 finalists, everyone had their advisor, and everyone was like, Dr. whatever, Dr. whatever, Dr. whatever, and it was just like, Ethan. And I was like, awesome. I don't know, I'm good, I feel good about it. We also have sent students out to the International Astronautical Congress so they can present their research, but also make those networking opportunities. And that's always been a really great opportunity for us to go through. And we've had students travel overseas to be able to go to conferences and learn cultural competency. I think that's also a big part of what we want to do in our interconnected world, right? I'm betting a lot of you have friends who are international, maybe English not first language, maybe their families are different, but it's important for us to think about it. And so when I think, what are we preparing students to be? When I'm answering this question about what we're trying to do at the Battelle Center, at the end of the day, we're trying to prepare students to be innovators and leaders in their industries. We don't want to make engineers. We don't want to make public policy theory folks. We want people to be ready to innovate in their spaces. We want policy majors to know, how do we talk to engineers? How can we ask the right questions to get the information we need? And we want our engineers to be able to go to decision makers who are deciding everything about what we do in research and science and are the ones who are funding it all, right? $25 billion went to research at universities from the federal government alone in 2022, and less than 8% of all of Congress has any kind of STEM background. It's 40 members out of 535. And they are deciding whether or not our research matters or gets implemented, right? How are we going to make that happen? How are we going to change that world? We can change that role by giving you the skill sets to be persuasive and communicate your science and those essential skills to become an innovator rather than just someone who gives out science and data. So, all that said, thank you all so much for listening. I know I'm a little bit different than your usual spaces. I hope this was enlightening. I also am happy to take questions from you all, whether they're in the chat online or anything like that. I'm happy to answer questions. So thank you all so much for your time. And we'll save your applause until, I guess, the very, very end. I see a question right here. Yeah, go ahead.
According to your talk, you want us to be innovators and leaders
Yeah.
in our respective fields. But will you provide such scenarios in which we go to some company or some venture capitalist for financing our idea?
Yeah.
Funding opportunities? Do we get those real life experiences?
Absolutely. So some examples here. So that cybersecurity challenge team I was talking to you about, one of the things they've had to do throughout their challenge this semester is not just figure out what they need to add and what kinds of things they can do to make cultural change, but also how are they going to get it paid for? How does this fit into the financial structure at Johns Hopkins? And they are actually traveling on Sunday to the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab to talk to folks and pitch how they want to get it financed and have that opportunity there, right? We've also had students who are working on challenges. I had a biomedical engineering student team come to me. They're like, hey, we want to work on something that's community impact. We don't really have anyone to do it with, and we want to partner. And I was able to help get them a pitch to pitch the Nationwide Children's Hospital on the type of work they wanted to do. And they pitched them the idea of something they could do and they could fund to be able to do that. Rather than me pitching, I'm making the connection and allowing the students to make the pitch. And I tell them, hey, if you want to meet beforehand, we can talk about it and make sure your pitch is ready to be able to get that funding.
And how does the situation change for the worse if we are not part of some college, whether we are just outsider out of the college? I mean, just a graduated student.
Okay, so like you're saying, you just graduated. How do we access some of these opportunities in that way? Absolutely. So I talk with alumni all the time. I've definitely done some mentorship opportunities with alumni. I also do a lot of connecting using my network when alumni are looking for new jobs. And I've done resume lookovers, I've done interview training and stuff like that to be able to help them be ready for those opportunities. It's not something that happens all the time, and not all of our alumni take advantage of it, but I have at least 4 or 5 alumni that I talk with regularly and try to help them in their professional growth through the Battelle Center. Yeah, absolutely. I can look at some of the questions online as well. I see there's maybe 2 in the Q&A. Let's take a look. Great. Do you have any suggestions on how to market the importance of essential skills to engineers who believe that interdisciplinary classes and experiences is a hindrance in their learning? Andy, what a wonderful question. I don't know if you are already in a space. So one of the things we've learned, right? I'm a part of a group called Empowerment. And it's PhD students who are interested in energy. They have various different backgrounds, right? And so we're trying to give them a broader understanding of sustainable energy. And I'm a mentor. I'm the internal mentor for one of the students. And he said, I know the science and I know when people are wrong. And I am so stubborn about it that when someone's wrong, I just think they can't be smart enough to understand it. But I now realize that that can't be the answer. And other people, I have to be able to figure out other perspectives. Can you give me better experiences in doing that, right? He's already in a space where he knows, hey, I'm not going to be able to be effective in some of these spaces. How do I grow those skills? What we've learned, it's also, we're researching the program and making sure, hey, how effective is it in creating these skills? But one of the things we learned through the research is that PhD students across these spaces are expecting interdisciplinary opportunities, but that classes are not enough. Just saying, hey, take a class outside of your major is not enough when creating these things. So I think in one space, I think we have to understand that sometimes classwork isn't going to be what the interdisciplinary space is. And I think we have to also bring in industry partners who say, industry folks, people who are out there who can come to these students and say, hey, It's not enough to just know the engineering. You're going to run into a brick wall if you do that. And we have a lot of our guest speakers are a space where it says like, hey, we bring in someone from Blue Origin. We want them, we know 50 students, 60 students are coming to that event because they want jobs and they want to work for Blue Origin. And we know that these folks are going to say, hey, it's not enough to just know these things. We're doing pretty cool things, but you need more skills. And I think it's about finding the incentives. And if industry partners are saying, hey, we need these in our spaces, I think it's a lot more effective in being able to help people understand what is going on and why they need them. It's not just saying, you need this, go do it. We need to be connected to the why. And sometimes, Professor Edmondson said the same thing. He's like, I've been saying a lot of the things you said in class, and they were all like nodding their heads more this time and answering you and coming up and saying they really enjoyed it. But sometimes we're not going to listen to the same people we've been listening to this whole time. We need outsiders to come in and verify that information, right? Just like in innovation, we need outsiders, we need stakeholders. We need those people to come in and say those things. So maybe it's an opportunity in different colloquium talks. Maybe it's an opportunity in student organizations to bring in guest speakers that can talk to those things. I know we're right at time. I can take maybe one more question if anybody has something they want to say right now. Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, y'all. If you have any questions or want to talk afterwards, I'll be here for a little bit and we can talk about it. I'd love to shake your hand and say hello and give you a business card because I printed off a bunch of them. And so I got to give them away so people think I'm doing things. Right? I appreciate you all. Thank you all so much for your time.
So Ethan's flying out at 2:30 this afternoon. We have some time. If anybody wants to spend some time with Ethan talking about whatever you want to talk about, it's absolutely no problem. We're available between now and 2:30. So please just come and see us.
Yeah. Thank y'all.
Thank you.